Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I'm Dalton Gentry, and I am back with something we've done once before. Something that was very popular, and something that everyone said I should do again. And this time, I've even tried to make it a little more accessible. We're going to be doing a shelf tour. We're going to go through the top shelf of this fine bookshelf here, just right there. There are plenty of more books and a slew of musical instruments, but we're just going to be talking about the top shelf today. Some of these are in random alphabetical order. They've kind of gotten mixed up over the last few months of me not paying attention to the alphabetical order. So we're just going to start at the beginning and see what we've got. So, pull a book and start. I have Artie Lang, Too Fat to Fish. I have no reason to own this book, except I used to work at a bookstore throughout college, and for some reason, like, this book was always just, like, face out on the shelf. And I walked by it every day for like 5 years. I'm like, I like that guy. I'd read that book. So I bought it, and I took it home, and I was so excited to sit and read this book that had been like haunting me for years. And, never got around to it. And I believe one of the biggest complaints I had with it, where is it here? Like halfway through this book, the pages are messed up. They cut off randomly. And, like, you lose half the novel. I can't remember where it is exactly, and of course I can't find it, but yeah, it's missing some... There it is. Like, right in the beginning, it's printed incorrectly, so you lose, like, half the paragraphs. Whatever, it's fine. I think I spent $1 on it, and it's just kind of traveled with me ever since. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Casey, I'm not sure actually how that's pronounced. This is something we've actually talked about doing on the channel for a number of years now, and we've just never gotten around to it. I think it'd be a good read. It's one that I've definitely always wanted to give a shot to. It's a classic, man. I've just never had a chance to sit down and actually read it. So maybe we'll get around to doing that for the channel. I don't think that needs any explanation. Most people are pretty familiar with what that book is. Next up, A Lion Amongst Men, Gregory Maguire. I've said many times before, I am a big theater fan, and Wicked obviously was right about, I guess you'd say, my generation of musical theater. I mean, I think the big thing right now is if you're that young generation getting into musical theater, it's Hamilton, but for me, it was Wicked. And, you know, love it, don't love it, whatever. I did definitely read the books. I believe this is the third book of the series, Son of a Witch being the second, the first being, obviously, Wicked. Not a bad retelling of, you know, the Frank Baum classic Wizard of Oz. Different take on things. It's enjoyable. I'd suggest it. The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. This is something, again, I think I picked up on a bit of a whim. Adrian actually had suggested the Tao Te Ching a lot. And I'm probably saying that absolutely terribly, but, you know, whatever. Sorry. So, you know, I got a copy. I kind of just picked around at it when I first got it, picking out things here or there, but it's definitely been one that's always been on my list. It'd be no more than a day read, even if you sat down and actually burnt through it like this. A lot of it very short verse. I don't know. We'll see. I've always kind of had a thing for Eastern philosophy, so that might be an interesting adventure. We'll see. One day. The Poetry Handbook, 2nd edition, published Oxford, John Leonard. I believe this was a textbook that I had to pick up for a poetry class, obviously, in college. And I remember this is actually a pretty handy guide. It actually goes through chapter by chapter, and it breaks down meter, it breaks down form, layout, punctuation, lineation, rhyme, diction, syntax. And it goes in such heavy depth with great examples. This was a nice book to have, especially when you're studying poetry for the first time, because you're going to have to sit down, and you're going to have to break down the words and understand what's going on here. See, I don't know, something I don't think we'd ever be using on the channel, maybe the knowledge we gained from it to be used on the channel, but not something I'd be doing a series on anytime soon. Daniel Keyes, Flowers for Algernon. One of my favorite books, and one of the first books that we actually reviewed on the channel, because I just absolutely love it. Actually, I did a lot of speech and debate in high school, and I was the Missouri State Prose Reading Champion, thanks to Flowers for Algernon. Fantastic book, fantastic read if you've never had the pleasure. Definitely would suggest that particular novel. Herman Hesse, Damien, I believe? Damien? I read Siddhartha, really enjoyed it, so I made sure I picked this one up. Never got around to it just yet. but definitely on my read list. I'm a big fan of Siddhartha. I think it's a beautiful short novel. Another book that I've been pushing that we should definitely read for the channel for a long time now. Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground. This may be making an appearance here on the channel sometime this year. We're not 100% sold just yet, but definitely a classic. Adrian's really big in Dostoevsky, so I wouldn't mind tackling this one. This is another big one that I feel that I should have read at this point, and just haven't gotten around to it. A fine copy of The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I won't speak too much on this. If you haven't noticed, we've done a review on The Road early this year. I'll just leave that where it is. Make sure you check that review out. It's glowing. The Genius of Language. 15 writers reflect on their mother tongues. Amy Tan, definitely one of the writers on here that I recognize just off the bat. Where did I get this? I believe this was probably one of the library sales, because definitely have some library blacked out here. So the city I live in, every year, all the library branches get together and basically clean their shelves. And I found this. I thought this would be something I might be able to draw something out of for a linguistics class that I took last semester. I always pick up things like this. Anytime there's a book on language or on writing, I'm like, it's $1. I can put it on the shelf. Maybe I'll pull something from it someday that we can use. Sometimes I get there, sometimes I don't. Stephen King, Gerald's Game. I believe they made a Netflix adaptation of this, perhaps. Maybe Hulu, I'm not sure. Definitely an interesting read. Gerald's Game is a different style of horror than you normally get with Stephen King. This is definitely psychological horror, and a pretty decent read at that. Definitely a big Stephen King fan. We've done a lot of Stephen King reviews. Not sure if we'd ever get around to this one, but would definitely suggest it. Walking in Circles Before Lying Down. This is one of Megan's books that has found its way to my shelf. Anytime that they're... Speaking of walking in circles until lying down, apparently the dog is not happy with its current situation because I'm not paying attention to it. This particular book, haven't read it myself. Any book that is about dogs, Megan will always want to read, so I always make sure if I find one, especially one that's quality, a lot of people say is good, I always pick it up for her. Moving on. The Shining. The Shining is another novel that I believe we read in college. I'm pretty sure that's why I have this copy. We did a pop lit class, but it's definitely a classic of the horror genre. You have to have a copy. Decent read. Adrian absolutely loves this particular book. I'm indifferent on it. It's okay. Nothing too special. However, continuing with the pattern of Stephen King, On Writing, stripped cover, definitely have a copy of On Writing. You're going to learn... The cat is right by the camera right now. My apologies. Please move along, darling. No, nobody wants you on camera right now. Nobody wants to see you. Definitely pick up a copy of Stephen King's On Writing if you have not already, especially if you want to be a writer. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this, and a very rare glimpse into the world of writing that you don't often get from authors. But Stephen King was kind enough to open up his doors and show you what the glory is all about. Chuck Klosterman. Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. This was a book when I was working at the bookstore. I just randomly picked up one day, pop culture, humor, and I just burnt through it actually while I was standing at my desk, so I ended up buying it. I felt guilty for buying it, or for reading it and not buying it. Chuck Klosterman here. Countless writers and artists have spoken for a generation, but no one has done it quite like Chuck Klosterman. With an exhaustive knowledge of pop culture and almost effortless ability to spin brilliant prose out of an unlikely subject matter, Klosterman attacks the entire spectrum of postmodern America. Reality TV, internet porn, Pamela Anderson, literary Jesus freaks, and the real difference between apples and oranges. Of which there is none. This book is funny. This book is witty. If you're into pop culture or just looking for a quick, enjoyable read, I definitely suggest it. 100%. Louis L'Amour's Hondo. This is another book that we had to read in college for, I believe, again, a pop fiction class. Possibly one of the few westerns that I've ever read. I like Hondo. I think it's cheesy and terrible, but I really do enjoy it. My God, I could still order free playing cards from the lovely little insert on this book here. I'm going to assume that offer has expired at this point, but I think I should send it out just because. If you like westerns, Louis L'Amour is the quintessential pop fiction western writer. might give it a look. Writing Creative Nonfiction, another book that I've had for a class. I actually got some good use out of this particular book. I took a class on writing creative nonfiction, and this book was okay. A lot of different stories in here. There was one that I really enjoyed. It's called, like, My Mother's Challah or something like that. Talking about challah bread, which is just wonderful. I can't think of it right now, and of course I wasn't prepared for this. I was just going to pull books off a shelf. But this gives you an idea of the difference between writing fiction and, of course, writing nonfiction with a little spice, because you need to make it interesting. Instructions and insights from the teachers of the associated writing programs. How lovely. Moving on. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Ernest Hemingway. This is one that actually I have not tackled just yet. Hemingway's novels are hit and miss. Great short story writer, sometimes iffy as a novelist. So this is one that I haven't sat down and completely tackled 100%. I think it would be interesting to do, especially on the channel, since Adrian is such a big Hemingway fan, since I'm such a big Hemingway fan. But something that would definitely be worth a look at some point in time. Only a couple more books. I'm glad you're bearing with me at this point, because I have no idea what this is. This is Psychic. And Psychic, what are you? Psychic, Awakening the Power Within You, Carol Kennedy. And I have no idea where this is coming from or why I have this. Sometimes that happens. I get random books. I assumed this was probably, I thought, like a psychic pop fiction thing. But no, this is about reading your palms, ESP, reading cards, the lazy person's approach to ESP. That sounds exactly like me. I have no explanation for this. I honestly don't believe in anything along these lines, numerology, things like that. I don't know. It's on the shelf, though, so it will probably remain on the shelf. I think we might be hitting some garage sale buys here, because this is The Dangerous Autocats, The Many Lives of a Soviet Spy by Jonathan Miles. Not too familiar with this particular text or author. I believe this might be a Megan book. The FBI's files on the Soviet agent Otto Katz called him an extremely dangerous man. The British Secret Service wondered if he was the director of all communist policy in the West. These labels don't even begin to tell the story. That sounds terrible. But yeah, crime fiction. People love crime fiction. I don't know why. Strip cover, The Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka. This is actually one that I have been considering maybe doing my own review on. It is a short story, if you will, very short story, novella. And it is quintessential early sci-fi. A lot of good stuff builds from this. I have a lot of critical essays in this tiny little text as well, documentation on the text, essays, like I said, on the Metamorphosis, but definitely a classic of not only literature, but a classic of science fiction fantasy literature, which you don't get often. It's a weird genre that doesn't get a lot of the respect it deserves, I believe. And I have one more book on this empty little shelf. And, of course, this is a Steve Donahue. Hot House, The Art of Survival and the Survival of Art at America's Most Celebrated Publishing House. Farah, Strass, and Giroux. And I probably butchered that, and that's fine. Right off the bat, Mad Men for the Literary World, quote from Junot Diaz. I do believe Steve actually sent me this one. This was one of his mini packages that he's just randomly sent, said, you know, hey, put it on the shelf. I think it's for you. Put it on the shelf. Get to it one day. Because I felt so bad, because Steve was flooding me with books, because he is such a gentleman, and such a generous man, to be honest. I said, I can't read these that fast, Steve. You just put them on the shelf. So this is definitely on the shelf. It does sound interesting to me. Acclaim from Toni Morrison, acclaim from Junot Diaz, Blake Bailey, Kurt Anderson. Oh my. I'm just not sure at what mood I would be in to get into this book, but it does sound interesting. So anyway, Shelf Haul, Part 2. For some reason, people really enjoyed the first shelf haul. It's not something that I have ever really considered doing, but hey, if everyone enjoyed it, we'll put another one up here. So this was Shelf Haul Round 2. If you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Give this video a like. Let us know how you feel about the shelf haul concept, because there's plenty of more bookshelves in here. And if you would be so inclined to help us create more content like this here on Strip Cover Lit, there's a link, as always, to our Patreon, to be found in the description below.